What's up, Taiwan? I'm Yvonne Young. Thanks for joining us. Speed and realism are the order of the day as Taiwan's largest annual military exercises continue around the country. Kang reports.
F-16 fighter jets land in Hualien for a quick pit stop. While the engines are hot, ground crews get to work, quickly refueling the jets and checking its systems. They're scrambling to get some of Taiwan's most important weapons back into the fight, practicing key skills as part of this year's Kuang exercises. As the drills enter their third day, Taiwan's military hopes the pressure adds to the realism of this year's drills and tests the country's defense. Over the past 2 days, Taiwanese fighter jets have redeployed to the country's east, further from the Taiwan Strait, to this airfield known as Jiasan Air Force Base.
Right, it's well documented that there's a big mountain on the East Coast where a lot of aircraft can hide safely for storage and in times of war or crisis. As much as you want to hide the aircraft, at some point, they're going to need to fly. And once they fly, that puts a big sort of bull's eye on a target for the Chinese to strike.
Fast-paced and more realistic, this year's exercises are the largest in the country's history. And while the Air Force drills in the east, units across Taiwan are working on responsiveness. Here, learning to recapture ground from enemy forces and evacuate wounded.
战争一定会面临到伤损。 那当下的抢救都是第一时间，因为要把握黄金时间，我们一定在最快的时间做好一个止血的动作。
Days ago, the majority of these soldiers were civilians. The military says they're using reservists to improve realism. In a war, thousands will be called up to defend the country.
不管是单兵的所用的枪械，还是说通讯器材，其实都是后备部队最基本的一些战具啦。我觉得透过这样子真实演练哦，让国人知道说，其实后备部队其实它也有一定战力。我觉得这样效果是不错的。
From air bases in Hualien to the streets of Taiwan's major cities, countrywide Kuang exercises will continue for another 7 days. And by adding pressure and bringing in different elements, the military hopes to show the public that its defense capabilities and the threats it faces are both very real. Justin Wu and Kang for TaiwanPlus.
A highlight of this year's Kuang exercise is showing how Taiwan's military counters China's gray zone tactics. And to learn more about this type of coercive action from Beijing, TaiwanPlus reporter Alec McDonald spoke to former Pentagon Senior Director for Taiwan, Mongolia, and China, Tony Hu.
There's recently been a lot of increase in gray zone activity. Can you quickly go through, for those unfamiliar with what gray zone activity is, what does that mean? Could you give us an example?
Gray zone activity are those type of things that destabilizes the government, but it's short of active war. So things such as the recent Chinese intrusion into Taiwan's air defense identification zone, crossing the center line, and also the use of the maritime militia to disrupt Taiwan's fishing activities. And even economic coercion is part of the gray zone activities, such as China stopped importing from Taiwan's agricultural products and fish and stuff. They try to use the people, such as the farmer of the pineapples and the fish growers, to complain to the government. So these are the type of things that's short of active war, but it disrupts a targeted government.
There's been recent discussion that the PLA has shifted to making gray zone activity a main part of trying to take Taiwan, and that they're going to aim for coercion first before attempting an amphibious assault. Is that the way that the PLA is heading?
Gray zone activity in and by itself will not be able to convince Taiwan to surrender. But what it does do is tear Taiwan apart from the inside. Gray zone activity includes disinformation and cognitive warfare, where if you look at the current split within Taiwan, the people who's saying, hey, let's just be nice to Taiwan, the people who promotes appeasement, for example, they take a totally different position from the ones who wants to protect Taiwan's freedom. So that within Taiwan is very strong forces to tear Taiwan into two camps. I think that might be China's overall grand strategy, where tear Taiwan apart from the inside and let PLA come in to finish the job. But tearing Taiwan apart from the inside in and by itself is not going to cause Taiwan to surrender to China. The PLA still has to come in. So therefore, it's part of the grand strategy, I believe, and trying to make it easier for China to attack.
So in that case where we see a sudden increase of gray zone activity, and then it turns into an amphibious assault, what potential risks are posed by that specific situation?
China does have a very large military. However, Taiwan, because of its geography, it is protected by water. And no matter how you try to take over a region, you still have to have feet on the ground to say you have it, okay? So China, no matter what, needs to cross the Taiwan Strait. And Taiwan Strait, in a military term, is a kill zone. It's a clean kill zone. When we fight wars, such as in Ukraine, for example, you see some movement up front, you have to be able to identify it's a friend or foe. You don't want to shoot your own guy, right? But if Taiwan Strait is clear, there's no friendly forces over Taiwan Strait, everything that come over is enemy, you just shoot into it. It's a very easy kill zone because the time you spend to do identification friend and foe is a time that uncertainty also sometimes makes a difference whether you win or die. But in this case, everything coming over is an enemy, you killed it.
That was former Pentagon official Tony Hu. Stay tuned to TaiwanPlus for more coverage on this year's Hanguang exercise. The opposition Kuomintang has passed its version of a bill responding to possible U.S. tariffs with cash handouts and business support.
特别条例制定通过。
The bill provides a total of $18.6 billion to boost employment, increase national defense capabilities, and expand social welfare support. Every citizen would also get about $340. The KMT version cuts out subsidies for the state power company as originally proposed by the cabinet. U.S. President Donald Trump has told Canada he's slapping the country with 35% tariffs starting from August 1st. Trump wrote in a letter to Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney that the tariffs are a response to alleged fentanyl trafficking through Canada into the U.S. He added that if Ottawa retaliates with its own increased tariffs, any amount he raises them by would be added to his base of 35%. Trump's letter comes a day after he announced new tariffs on 8 countries with the highest rate of 50% on Brazil. Brazil's president says he's willing to negotiate with the U.S., but will respond with his own 50% tariffs if that falls through. At a gala dinner in Malaysia, ASEAN leaders are chewing the fat over U.S. tariff policy. But with major powers from outside the region joining in, geopolitical rivalries are on the menu too. John Van Triest reports.
Dinner is served in Kuala Lumpur as a diplomatic who's who gathers in Malaysia. This is a meeting of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, but this time invited guests include a range of foreign ministers from far beyond the region. But behind the handshakes, smiles, and the dancing is delicate tension. The shadow of U.S. tariffs looms over the proceedings, and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is here. ASEAN member countries now face U.S. tariffs of 25% to 40% on their goods, and some of the guest nations from outside the region have also got their tariff notices from the Trump administration. Rubio defended the letters and the tariff set to come.
Now, obviously, that does not foreclose the opportunity for individual countries to enter into negotiations that perhaps can adjust those numbers. But in the end, the president still remains very committed to a rebalancing of trade that's fair to America and also at the same time protects our own industrial capabilities.
But elsewhere, there were signs of Asian countries ready to weather the tariff storm together. Host Malaysia's prime minister has also called for Southeast Asia to come together and its members to trade more with one another in difficult times.
Tariffs, export restrictions, and investment barriers have now become the sharpened instruments of geopolitical rivalry. This is no passing storm. It is a new weather of our time. Now, ASEAN must confront this reality with clarity and conviction.
And at a meeting of the ASEAN Plus 3, China, Japan, and South Korea, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi had this to say.
同时，我们也面临单边保护主义的冲击，
个别大国滥施关税等挑战，形势越是复杂，10+3合作也要顺应大势，排除干扰，担当作为，同舟共济，不断增强合作动力，提升发展韧性，持续推进区域一体化进程，建设好我们的共同家园。
But while tariffs took up much of the energy, geopolitics was on the menu too, with major rivals represented in one place. Marco Rubio has met with Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov, and he's met Chinese foreign minister Wang Yi too. Despite the current administration taking an America First approach, Rubio has said the U.S. is committed to ASEAN and the broader region.
The Indo-Pacific, the region, remains a focal point of U.S. foreign policy. When I hear in the news that perhaps the United States or the world might be distracted by events in other parts of the planet, I would say distraction is impossible, because it is our view, our strong view, and a reality that this century and the story of the next 50 years will largely be written here, in this region, in this part of the world.
And so, amid polite diplomatic surroundings, some of the great global tensions of the day are playing out, as the large swathes of the globe represented here wait to see what comes out of these talks. Andy Xue and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's top airlines reported record-high revenues for the first half of 2025, driven by busy summer travel and solid cargo operations. China Airlines, EVA Air, Starlux, and Tiger Air Taiwan all posted new highs for the January to June period. China Airlines, Taiwan's flagship carrier, made a record $3.6 billion, up 5% from last year, while Starlux brought in about $750 million, surging 34%. The airlines attributed the strong growth to steady exports of high-tech goods and rising travel to Southeast Asia. President Lai Ching-te has attended a flag presentation ceremony in Kaohsiung ahead of this year's University Games. Lai met Taiwan's national team at a national training center in the southern city before they head to Germany for the competition. Taiwan is sending a delegation of around 200 student athletes this year. The Games are scheduled to take place from July 16th to the 27th. Indigenous communities in eastern Taiwan are using their traditional gardening techniques to preserve local biodiversity. Chelsea Wu looks like how.
In remote parts of Hualien in eastern Taiwan, indigenous Bunong communities are keeping a special tradition alive, called Pisang Lavan, or family garden. It's a form of home gardening that helps preserve rare and diverse bean varieties.
从小就是有吃，尤其是我们煮小米的时候啊，还是要做什么，这个豆类一定都有。
In Pisang Lavan, some beans are grown along the edges of farmlands, while others are planted near homes. In 2014, when the Cixing Organic Agriculture Foundation began helping farmers switch to organic practices, they unexpectedly uncovered over 20 rare and ancient bean varieties thriving in these backyard gardens.
这么久以前的种子，然后一代一代一直还有人在种，然后持续的更新它的活性，然后让它在土壤里面生存，记忆每一天的太阳，每一天的雨。
To keep the knowledge of how to grow these beans, they set up the Bunong Bean Group, aiming to pass down the community's agricultural wisdom. Conservation takes place directly in the fields, with replanting every year, but modernization is threatening their efforts.
年轻人现在有的都是还在外面工作，就是怕说他们不肯做啊，不肯种这些啊，这个一定要种才有成果啊，你没有种下去，它怎么会有？
Members of the Bunong Bean Group remain hopeful that their agricultural know-how and traditions can be handed down to younger generations. Much like the beans they cultivate, the tradition will take root in everyday life, flourishing for years to come. Alex Chen and Chelsea Wu for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, remember Mu Deng, the baby pygmy hippo that once captured hearts? He's now 1 year old. Let's take a look at how he's doing. I'm Yvonne Yang. Take care, and I'll see you next time.